The neon lights of Helio Station's entertainment district painted Ryder's face in alternating blues and reds as he made his way through the crowded thoroughfare. 6 years as a premium companion had taught him to move with purpose without appearing rushed. Clients paid for the illusion of unhurried attention, and he delivered that fantasy with practiced ease. Tonight's client had booked him for the 3rd time this month. Room 4217, Stellar View Suites, the most expensive accommodations on the station. The mysterious woman who called herself Celine paid in unmarked credits, requested absolute privacy, and always wore a hooded cloak until they were alone. Another night, another performance, Ryder muttered, adjusting the collar of his tailored jacket. The escort service marketed him as the diplomat, skilled in conversation, discretion, and whatever physical comfort the client desired. It paid well enough to keep him in his own comfortable quarters far from the station's lower levels where he'd started. The Stellar View's automated doors slid open with a soft hiss. The concierge nodded without making eye contact. They recognized him by now. Professional courtesy meant no questions asked. When the elevator deposited him on the 42nd floor, Ryder paused to check his reflection in the polished wall panel. Sharp jawline, dark hair artfully tousled, green eyes alert despite the late hour. He looked the part of a man worth his considerable hourly rate. The door to 4217 didn't require him to knock. It recognized his biometric signature and opened silently. The suite beyond was dimly lit, the panoramic windows displaying the swirling nebula that gave this sector its name. The violet and crimson gases created an intimate atmosphere no designer could replicate. "Celine?" Ryder called softly. Movement from the shadowed bedroom doorway caught his attention. She stood there, still cloaked, but something was different. Her usually confident posture seemed strained. "You came," she said, her voice carrying an unusual harmonic quality he hadn't noticed before. "I wasn't certain you would." Ryder offered his practiced smile. "I'm nothing if not reliable." "Yes," she replied, stepping into the room. Humans often are, when properly motivated. The way she said "humans" made him pause. Before he could process the oddity, she raised her hands to her hood and lowered it. Ryder's breath caught. The woman before him was humanoid but decidedly not human. Her skin was a pale lavender that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Where human hair would be, she had what appeared to be tendrils that moved with subtle independence, their colors shifting between silver and blue. Most striking were her eyes, large, almond-shaped, and entirely black except for pinpoints of white light that seemed to mirror the stars outside. "You're not." Ryder took an involuntary step back. "Human?" "No." She removed the cloak entirely, revealing a slender form clothed in a simple bodysuit of material that resembled liquid metal. "I am Liriani. My true name is Selenara." Ryder's hand moved to the small disruptor he kept concealed for protection. "What is this? Some kind of setup?" Selenara raised her hands in a placating gesture. "I mean no harm. I've been paying for your company because I needed to trust you before revealing myself." "Trust me for what?" His mind raced through possibilities: blackmail, espionage, some bizarre xenophile fetish. "To help me escape." She moved toward the window, the nebula's light playing across her features. "I am the last of my kind with pure empathic abilities. The Vorn Imperium has been transporting me to their research facility when our ship malfunctioned. I influenced the guards to put me in temporary housing until repairs could be arranged." Ryder's training kept his expression neutral despite his shock. "You're a fugitive." "I am a survivor," she corrected. "The Vorn would strip my mind to understand how Liriani empathic abilities function. They would use that knowledge as a weapon." As if to demonstrate, she extended her hand. Ryder felt a wave of calm flow through him, followed by something deeper, a sense of profound loneliness and determination that he somehow knew belonged to her. You feel what I want you to feel, she explained, lowering her hand. But I cannot control minds, only influence emotions. My people were diplomats, healers, before the Vorn decided we were more valuable as research subjects. Ryder's hand slowly moved away from his weapon. Why me? Your emotional signature is resilient. Strong. And you have access to parts of this station others do not. She approached him slowly. I have the resources to make it worth your while. Help me reach the outbound freighters, and you'll never need to sell your company again. Ryder studied her alien features, searching for deception. His years reading human clients gave him no advantage here. If she was telling the truth, helping her meant making enemies of the Vorn Imperium, a death sentence in most systems. If she was lying. I need proof, he said finally. Something more than party tricks with my emotions. Selenara nodded. Tonight. The Vorn commander will be searching for me. Stay, and you'll see what happens when they find me. Then decide. The soft chime of the station security alert sounded from the corridor outside. It seems, Selenara said with grim resignation, that your proof arrives sooner than expected. The security alert escalated from a soft chime to a blaring siren. Ryder's instincts kicked in as he moved to the window, scanning the exterior docking platforms where armored shuttles were already deploying troops. Vorn enforcers, Selenara said, her voice tight. They track their property relentlessly. Ryder turned to face her. How many? A standard retrieval unit. 5 soldiers and a sensory officer. She touched the metallic cuff around her wrist. This dampens my abilities, but not enough. The sensory officer can still detect my emotional signature when close. The hallway outside erupted with the sound of heavy boots and barked commands. Ryder made a split-second assessment of their options, none good, some survivable. The service corridor, he decided, moving to what appeared to be a decorative panel near the kitchenette. His fingers found the hidden release mechanism, revealing a narrow passage used by maintenance droids. The luxury suites have separate systems. It won't get us far, but it's a start. Selenara gathered her cloak, eyes fixed on the main door as its security panel flashed red, override codes being applied. They'll kill you, she said matter-of-factly. Humans who interfere with Vorn acquisitions aren't taken prisoner. Ryder gave a grim smile. Wouldn't be the first time someone's tried. Let's move. The service tunnel was cramped and dimly lit by maintenance strips along the floor. They moved quickly, Ryder leading the way through the labyrinthine passages he'd learned during years of discreet exits from clients' quarters. You know these paths well, Selenara observed as they descended a maintenance ladder. Part of the job, Ryder replied, dropping down to the level below. Privacy is the most expensive service I offer. The distant sound of the security alarm followed them down 3 levels before Ryder guided them through a narrow opening that emerged behind a food processing unit in one of the station's mid-tier restaurants, closed for the night cycle. We need to change your appearance, he said, surveying Selenara's distinctive features. And get off this level. They'll lock down transportation soon. Selenara's tendrils rippled with what Ryder was beginning to recognize as anxiety. The dampening cuff limits what I can do, but... She closed her eyes in concentration. Slowly, the shimmering quality of her skin dulled to a pale gray, and her tendrils seemed to merge into what might pass for eccentric human hairstyling in the dimmed light. It's a surface illusion, she explained, her voice strained. It won't fool scanners or the sensory officer, but casual observers won't look twice. Ryder nodded appreciatively. That'll help. Come on, I know someone in maintenance who owes me a favor. They moved through the restaurant's deserted dining area toward the public concourse beyond. The night cycle meant fewer civilians, but also made them more conspicuous. Ryder casually draped his arm around Selenara's shoulders, adopting the relaxed posture of a couple returning from an evening out. When did you decide? Selenara asked softly as they walked. To help me. Ryder kept his eyes forward, scanning for threats. When the alarm sounded. Maybe before. I've spent 6 years being whatever people pay me to be. Gets old. You could have earned more turning me in. Probably, he conceded. But some things aren't about credits. They reached a maintenance access point marked with faded warning signs. Ryder entered a code, and the door slid open to reveal a stocky woman with grease-stained coveralls and a perpetual scowl. Twice in 1 month, Taylor, the woman growled. This better be good. Hello to you too, Dex, Ryder replied with forced cheerfulness. Remember that time I kept that magistrate's wife occupied while you fixed the malfunction in their private shuttle? Dex's scowl deepened. What do you need? Transport to the lower docks. No questions. Dex's eyes flicked to Selenara, narrowed slightly, then returned to Ryder. Transport is one thing. Being an accessory is another. She's not what they're saying she is, Ryder said quietly. Dex snorted. Never are. She reached into her pocket and produced a small device. Maintenance cart. Bay 12. Leave it at junction 40 or I'll report it stolen myself. As Ryder reached for the activation key, Dex caught his wrist. This makes us even, Taylor. All debts cleared. Understood. The maintenance cart was little more than a glorified hover platform with controls and modest shielding from the industrial environments of the station's lower levels. It wasn't designed for speed, but the access it provided to restricted areas was worth the trade-off. As they descended through the station's infrastructure toward the loading docks, Selenara watched Ryder with undisguised curiosity. Your emotional landscape is complex, she said finally. Most humans broadcast fear or desire prominently. You suppress both. Ryder kept his eyes on the route ahead. Like I said, part of the job. This Dex person. She was afraid, yet helped anyway. Why? People are complicated, Ryder replied. Loyalty, guilt, self-interest, they all get tangled together. A security alert flashed across the cart's basic console, station-wide search initiated. All transport hubs restricted. Ryder swore under his breath. Change of plans. We won't make it to the docks now. Then where? He guided the cart down a rarely used service tunnel. Somewhere they won't think to look for a high-value fugitive. The cart emerged into a vast, open chamber, one of the station's hydroponic gardens. During day cycle, it would be filled with workers tending the crops that supplemented the station's food supplies. Now, in the artificial night, it was a shadowy maze of vegetation. We can hide here until I figure out our next move, Ryder said, powering down the cart. The plant mass confuses bioscanners. Selenara stepped onto the soft soil, her expression one of wonder as she gazed at the earth plants growing in neat rows. She reached out to touch a broad leaf, and it seemed to lean toward her fingers. Your world creates such beauty, she murmured. Ryder was about to respond and a sharp pain lanced through his shoulder. He stumbled forward, hand instinctively reaching for the wound as he turned to see a figure in the distinctive armor of a Vorn enforcer emerging from the shadows, weapon raised. Step away from the asset, human, the enforcer commanded, the translator giving the words a metallic quality. Selenara's eyes widened in alarm, but Ryder noticed something else. The cuff on her wrist had begun to pulse with a soft light. The enforcer had accidentally hit it with his shot. Run, Ryder gasped, lunging toward the enforcer to buy her time. But Selenara didn't run. Instead, she raised her hands toward the Vorn soldier. The air between them seemed to ripple, and the enforcer froze mid-step, his weapon clattering to the ground as he clutched at his helmet. What? Ryder began. The cuff is malfunctioning, Selenara explained, her voice strained with effort. We need to go. Now. before more arrive. Ryder looked from the immobilized enforcer to Selenara, making his final decision. This way, he said, leading her deeper into the garden. And when we're safe, you're going to tell me everything you left out about those abilities of yours. The hydroponic garden's artificial night cycle cast long shadows among the rows of vegetation as Ryder led Selenara deeper into the maze. The sweet scent of ripening fruits mingled with the metallic tang of nutrient solution. Behind them, the Vorn enforcer's distress beacon pulsed with increasing urgency. He's called for backup, Ryder said, gritting his teeth against the burning pain in his shoulder. The wound wasn't deep, but the Vorn weapons left chemical residue that slowed healing and amplified pain, a calculated design choice. Selenara moved with surprising grace despite her obvious exhaustion. The dampening cuff is damaged, but not fully disabled. My abilities are unpredictable now. They reached a maintenance shed nestled between tall stalks of genetically modified wheat. Ryder punched in an access code. Another friend who owes you? Selenara asked as the door slid open. No, Ryder managed a wry smile. Just another escape route I've had reason to memorize. Inside, the small space was crowded with agronomic equipment and supply crates. Ryder moved immediately to a storage cabinet, retrieving a basic medical kit. We have minutes at most, he said, applying a numbing patch to his shoulder wound. That enforcer won't stay down long, and once he reports, they'll seal the entire agricultural sector. Selenara's tendrils writhed with obvious distress. What I did to him, it's forbidden among my people to cause such pain. To overwhelm another's emotional centers. You saved my life, Ryder countered, already rummaging through storage containers. He emerged with worker coveralls and tossed a set to her. Put these on. The fabric has trace elements that interfere with standard bioscans. As they changed, Ryder noticed Selenara studying the damaged cuff on her wrist. The metal was warped where the enforcer's shot had struck it, revealing complex circuitry beneath. Can you remove it now? He asked. She shook her head. It's genetically bonded. Removing it incorrectly would cause significant neural damage. Ryder finished securing his coveralls and checked the wound dressing. You promised explanations. What exactly are you capable of when that thing isn't limiting you? My people are emotional synthesizers, she said, adjusting her own disguise. We perceive, process, and can reflect emotional states. At full capacity, I can attune to any sentient being's emotional frequency, soothe distress, enhance positive states, or, she faltered, inflict emotional trauma by amplifying fear or pain. Useful skills, Ryder noted, checking the small scanner he'd pulled from his pack. The Vorn aren't just after a curiosity, are they? They want a weapon. The Imperium has been developing psychic warfare capabilities for decades, Selenara confirmed. My people refuse to participate. That refusal cost us our world. Before Ryder could respond, the scanner in his hand pulsed with an alert. They're sealing the sector. We need to move. He led her to what appeared to be a standard irrigation control panel, but after entering a sequence, the flooring beside it slid away to reveal a narrow passage. Unauthorized access point, he explained at her questioning look. Station's original builders left a few secrets the security upgrades missed. The passage dropped them into a dimly lit corridor clearly not meant for regular use. The air was stale, carrying the faint scent of recycled oxygen and old machinery. We're between the station's outer hull and the habitation ring, Ryder explained, leading the way through the cramped space. Maintenance doesn't even patrol here more than once a month. We can follow this around to the commercial docking bays. They moved in silence for several minutes, the only sound their footsteps and the distant hum of the station's massive environmental systems. Selenara suddenly stopped, her hand reaching out to grasp Ryder's arm. Someone's coming, she whispered. 2, no, 3 beings. Heightened emotional states. Focused purpose. Ryder glanced around the featureless corridor. No side passages, no maintenance hatches within sight. How far? Close. Very close. Her tendrils undulated with tension. One is a sensory officer. I can feel the artificial enhancements in their emotional signature. Ryder made a quick decision. Can you project emotion in a specific direction? Like a decoy? Selenara's eyes widened slightly. Yes, but with the damaged cuff, I can't predict the intensity. Do it anyway. Project fear, confusion, anything disruptive, down the corridor behind us. Make them think we went that way. She nodded, closing her eyes in concentration. The air seemed to thicken, and Ryder felt a wave of unease wash over him before it focused into a directed stream away from them. Selenara's damaged cuff sparked and flickered. Now we run, Ryder whispered, taking her hand. They sprinted forward as quietly as possible. Behind them, shouts of confusion echoed through the corridor. Ryder led them through a bewildering series of turns, climbing through access points and squeezing through maintenance spaces never meant for human passage. After what felt like hours but couldn't have been more than 20 minutes, they emerged into a small loading bay used for commercial deliveries. Cargo containers were stacked in neat rows, waiting for the day cycle's distribution. We need to rest, Ryder said, noting Selenara's labored breathing. Just briefly. They concealed themselves behind a stack of containers marked with corporate logos. Ryder checked his scanner again, frowning at the display. They've expanded the search to all lower levels. We're running out of places to hide. Selenara leaned against the container, her normally luminous skin dulled with fatigue. Why are you doing this, Ryder? You barely know me. I've brought nothing but danger into your life. Ryder was silent for a moment, considering the question. 6 years as an escort, you learn to read people. Human or not, I know the difference between someone running from justice and someone running for their life. He adjusted his position to check their surroundings. Besides, anyone the Vorn want this badly is someone worth protecting. There's more, Selenara said softly. I sense it. Ryder smiled faintly. Empaths. Always prying. Not prying. Observing. He sighed. Before Helios, I was a colonial administrator on Vega Prime. When the Vorn annexed the system, they gave us all choices that weren't really choices. I chose to disappear rather than serve their interests. Let's just say I have personal reasons to enjoy inconveniencing the Imperium. A distant alarm interrupted their conversation. Ryder checked his scanner again, cursing under his breath. They've started a compartment-by-compartment sweep. He studied the bay's layout. We need to get to Bay 17. There's a freelance hauler named Thorn who despises the Vorn even more than I do. Will this Thorn help us? For the right price. Ryder helped her to her feet. Do you really have the resources you claimed? Selenara touched a small pouch concealed beneath her coveralls. Liriani memory crystals. Worth more than this entire station to the right buyer. Knowledge preserved from a civilization the Vorn tried to erase. That'll do. Ryder peered around the edge of their hiding place. Ready for one more sprint? She nodded, her tendrils settling into a more determined configuration. Ryder, when we reach safety, there's something I must tell you. About why I chose you specifically. Save it, he replied, checking their path. First, we survive. Everything else is a luxury problem. They slipped from behind the containers, moving toward the bay's exit with renewed purpose. The commercial dock was just 3 levels away, and with it, their chance for escape from Helio Station and the pursuing Vorn. As they approached the doorway, it suddenly slid open, revealing a Vorn sensory officer, his enhanced sensory apparatus glowing with activated scanners. Asset located, the officer intoned, reaching for his weapon. Without hesitation, Ryder shoved Selenara behind him and charged forward, gambling everything on the element of surprise and the hope that whatever came next, they would face it together. Ryder's charge caught the sensory officer off guard. The Vorn stumbled backward, his weapon discharging into the ceiling as Ryder's shoulder connected with his midsection. Sparks rained down, emergency lights flashing in response to the damage. The scanner! Ryder shouted to Selenara as he grappled with the officer. Destroy it! Selenara darted forward, her movements fluid despite her exhaustion. The neural scanner mounted on the Vorn's helmet was their greatest threat, capable of mapping and recording her unique empathic signature for the entire pursuit force. She grabbed the device and channeled what remained of her energy through the damaged cuff. The scanner sizzled and went dark, its circuitry fried. The Vorn officer howled in pain as his neural link severed, giving Ryder the opening he needed. A precise strike to the breathing apparatus in the Vorn's helmet sent the alien crashing to the floor, struggling for air. This way, Ryder panted, pulling Selenara through the doorway and sealing it behind them. That bought us minutes at most. They sprinted through the maintenance tunnels, the station's ventilation system carrying distant alarms. Every step brought them closer to the commercial docking bay, their last hope for escape. Something's wrong, Selenara said suddenly, her steps faltering. I feel resonance. Ryder glanced back, noting the cuff on her wrist was pulsing erratically. What does that mean? Another empath, she whispered, her expression a mixture of hope and terror. Here, on the station. But that's impossible, I'm the last. Questions later, Ryder urged, guiding her forward. Bay 17 is just ahead. The commercial docking area was a hive of activity despite the late hour, cargo loaders and transport crews working to meet tight schedules. Perfect cover for two fugitives. Ryder led Selenara through the organized chaos, weaving between hovering pallets and automated loading drones. Bay 17 housed a battered transport vessel, its hull marked with the scars of numerous encounters with pirates, meteors, and possibly Imperial patrols. The name, Stray Impulse, was barely legible beneath layers of carbon scoring. Wait here, Ryder instructed, positioning Selenara behind a stack of cargo containers. Thorn is temperamental. Let me handle this. He approached the ship's loading ramp where a tall, lean human woman supervised the loading of several unmarked containers. Her face bore a lattice of fine scars, and a cybernetic eye glinted in the bay's harsh light. Captain Thorn, Ryder called, keeping his posture non-threatening. The woman turned, her cybernetic eye whirring as it focused. Taylor. Thought you'd settled into that cushy escort gig. Her natural eye narrowed. Why do you smell like trouble? Because I need transport off station. Immediately. 2 passengers. Thorn spat on the deck. Helios is locked down tighter than a magistrate's virtue. Vorn enforcers everywhere. She studied him with calculating intensity. What did you do? Pleasure the wrong official spouse? Something like that. Payment substantial. Must be. She gestured to the wound visible at his collar. That's Vorn weaponry. Before Ryder could respond, a station-wide announcement echoed through the docking bay, attention all personnel. Security lockdown in effect. Report any suspicious individuals to the nearest authority. Thorn's expression hardened. Double standard rate. Up front. Ryder nodded toward Selenara's hiding place. She has the payment. Valuable enough to make even you nervous. Nothing makes me nervous anymore, Taylor. Thorn signaled her crew. Final loading in 3 minutes. Anyone not aboard gets left behind. Ryder returned to Selenara, who was watching the exchange with obvious tension. She'll take us. Not cheap, but she's reliable. Can we trust her? With transport, yes. With our life stories, no. He helped her to her feet. Thorn doesn't ask questions because she doesn't want anyone asking about her own activities. They had nearly reached the ship when Selenara stumbled, clutching her head. The damaged cuff sparked violently, leaving scorch marks on her skin. "It's close," she gasped. "The resonance, too strong." Before Ryder could respond, a side door burst open. 3 Vorn enforcers entered, weapons raised, flanking a figure that made Selenara freeze in disbelief. An alien that resembled Selenara, similar lavender skin and independently moving tendrils, stepped forward. But where Selenara's features conveyed warmth and intelligence, this being's expression was coldly analytical. A network of cybernetic implants covered half his face, and his eyes were entirely mechanical. "Viridian," Selenara whispered, the name carrying emotions too complex for Ryder to decipher. The cyborg Liriani smiled without warmth. "Sister. Your escape was impressive, if futile." Thorn appeared at Ryder's side, a heavy disruptor pistol in her hand. "Friends of yours, Taylor?" "Quite the opposite," Ryder replied, shifting to shield Selenara. "Change of plans?" Thorn's cybernetic eye scanned the enforcers. "Depends on what they're offering. Vorn credits spend just as well as anyone's." Viridian stepped forward, his movements unnaturally precise. "The fugitive is Imperial property. Surrender her, and your involvement will be overlooked." Ryder felt Selenara's hand on his arm, her touch sending a surprising surge of strength through him. The damaged cuff was failing completely now, wisps of energy crackling around her wrist. "We thought you dead," Selenara said to her brother. "After the fall of Lyria." "I evolved," Viridian replied. "The Vorn recognized my potential. They enhanced what nature provided." He gestured to his implants. "No more limitations. No more ethical constraints. You betrayed our people." Selenara's voice trembled with anger and grief. "I survived," he corrected. "As will you, in service to the Imperium." Thorn cleared her throat. "Touching family reunion, but I've got a departure schedule to maintain." She raised her weapon, aiming at the enforcers. "So who's paying more?" Viridian's mechanical eyes focused on the captain. "The bounty for interfering with Imperial affairs is substantial. Your vessel would be forfeit." Thorn laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "Wouldn't be the first time." "Taylor, what's your offer?" Selenara stepped forward before Ryder could answer. "Liriani memory crystals. The complete cultural and scientific archive of a civilization. Worth more than your ship could earn in a century." The captain's cybernetic eye whirred as she processed this information. "Authentic?" "I am the keeper," Selenara replied with quiet dignity. "The crystals respond only to my genetic signature." Thorn nodded almost imperceptibly. "Decision made." Without warning, she fired at the ceiling above the enforcers. The energy burst struck a cargo restraint, sending heavy containers crashing down to create a barrier between them and the Vorn. "Aboard! Now!" Thorn shouted, already retreating up the ramp. Ryder pulled Selenara toward the ship as blaster fire erupted behind them. They barely made it inside before the ramp began to close. Through the narrowing gap, Ryder saw Viridian watching, his mechanical eyes cold and calculating. The ship's engines roared to life, the deck vibrating beneath their feet as emergency protocols were bypassed. Thorn strapped herself into the pilot's seat, her hands dancing across controls. "Docking clamp still engaged," she announced. "This will get messy." The stray impulse surged forward, metal screaming as the docking mechanisms were sheared away. Alarms blared throughout the bay as emergency force fields activated to prevent decompression. 5 minutes until station defenses target us, Thorn called over her shoulder. "If your payment's as good as claimed, I suggest you start explaining exactly what I've just signed up for." Selenara collapsed into a jump seat, the damaged cuff finally falling away from her wrist. Relief and exhaustion washed over her features. "My brother lives," she murmured, looking at Ryder with troubled eyes. "Corrupted, but alive." Ryder secured himself in the adjacent seat as the ship accelerated away from Helio Station. "Is he a threat to us?" "To everyone," she replied softly. "What the Vorn have done to him, they've weaponized empathic abilities in ways my people believed impossible." The ship shuddered as it absorbed a glancing hit from the station's defensive grid. Thorne swore creatively as she executed evasive maneuvers. "Where to?" the captain demanded. "And make it fast." Ryder looked to Selenara, realizing that their escape from the station was only the beginning. Whatever sanctuary they sought would be temporary at best, with the resources of the Vorn Imperium, and now her transformed brother, hunting them across the stars. The mining colony at Ceres Deep, he decided. "I still have connections in the asteroid belt. People who hate the Vorn enough to risk hiding us." As the stray impulse accelerated to jump velocity, Ryder watched Selenara studying her now bare wrist. For the first time since they'd met, her empathic abilities were completely unrestrained. The air around her seemed to shimmer with possibility and danger in equal measure. "Now," he said quietly, "about why you chose me specifically." The stray impulse drifted silently among the asteroid fields of Ceres Deep, its energy signature masked by the natural radiation from the mineral-rich rocks. From the viewport of the small cabin Thorne had allocated them, Ryder watched the slow ballet of mining vessels harvesting precious ores in the distance. 3 days, he said, turning to where Selenara sat cross-legged on the narrow bunk. No sign of pursuit yet. In the artificial light of the cabin, her lavender skin had regained some of its luminescence. Without the dampening cuff, her tendrils moved with graceful independence, reflecting her emotions in subtle patterns Ryder was beginning to recognize. "Viridian knows where we're going," she replied softly. "The empathic connection between siblings is persistent. Even with his modifications." Ryder sat beside her, the bunk creaking under their combined weight. "You still haven't told me why you chose me." "On Helios." Selenara's tendrils stilled momentarily. "It wasn't random. When the Vorn first captured me, they conducted experiments, trying to map empathic wavelengths across species. They tested my abilities against various subjects. Including humans," Ryder guessed. "Yes. Most minds were incompatible. Too chaotic, too resistant." Her gaze met his. "But a few showed remarkable resonance. The Vorn documented these individuals as potential vessels." "Vessels?" Ryder frowned. "For empathic transfer. If they couldn't replicate our abilities through technology, they planned to transfer them forcibly into compatible hosts." Her tendrils curled inward with distress. "I memorized the names on their list. When I escaped, I sought the closest compatible individual, you." Ryder processed this information, the implications settling like a weight. "So I'm just a potential container for your powers? A backup plan?" "Initially, yes," she admitted. "I needed someone who could potentially carry my abilities if I were recaptured. The memory crystals are valuable, but the knowledge of how to use them would die with me, unless transferred to a compatible mind." Ryder stood abruptly, pacing the small cabin. "And now? Is that still why I'm here?" Selenara rose with fluid grace, her tendrils extending toward him. "No. What began as calculation became something else. Your choice to help me, despite the danger, it was unexpected. Humans are not known for self-sacrifice among the stars. Don't confuse survival instinct with nobility," Ryder said, but without conviction. She moved closer, and Ryder felt the familiar subtle wave of her unrestrained empathic field, not manipulative, but revealing, like layers of emotional defenses being gently peeled away. "You feel deeper than you admit," she said. Behind the mercenary facade is something luminous. Before Ryder could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. Thorn's voice was tense. "We've got company. Vorn scout vessel on approach vector. Battle stations." The ship lurched as Thorn executed evasive maneuvers. Ryder steadied Selenara as alarms blared throughout the vessel. "They found us faster than expected," he said, reaching for his weapon. "Not they," Selenara corrected, her eyes distant. "Him. Viridian is aboard that scout ship. I can feel him searching." The stray impulse shuddered under enemy fire. Ryder led Selenara through the corridor toward the bridge, where Thorn was frantically working the controls. "We're outgunned," the captain announced without preamble. "That's an Imperial scout, top of the line. We've got minutes at most before they breach our shields." Through the view screen, Ryder saw the sleek Vorn vessel closing the distance, its weapons charging for another volley. "The mining colony," Ryder suggested. "If we can reach it." "Won't make it," Thorn cut him off. "And I won't lead Imperials to my contacts." Selenara stepped forward, her expression resolute. "There's another option. I can create an empathic distortion, powerful enough to confuse their sensors." "At this range?" Ryder asked. "Is that possible?" "With help," she said, turning to him meaningfully. "The resonance between us, if you're willing to risk it." Thorn looked between them. "Whatever you're planning, make it fast. Shields at 30%. Selenara took Ryder's hands. "I need your consent. A true empathic connection, it's intimate. Irreversible." "What exactly happens?" "Our emotional landscapes merge temporarily. You become an amplifier for my abilities." Her tendrils reached toward his face. "It will change you. Us. The connection never fully fades." Another blast rocked the ship. "Shields critical." Thorn shouted. Ryder made his decision. "Do it." Selenara's tendrils gently touched his temples. The contact was electric, sending warmth cascading through his body. Her golden eyes seemed to expand until they filled his vision, and then... Connection. Ryder gasped as his consciousness expanded beyond the confines of his own mind. He felt Selenara's presence, ancient wisdom and fierce vulnerability intertwined. Emotions flowed between them like currents in a vast ocean, her fear of recapture, his protective determination, and beneath it all, a growing affection neither had fully acknowledged. "Focus with me," her voice echoed in his mind. "Feel the energy building between us." Together, they shaped the gathered empathic energy, Ryder's human intensity combining with Selenara's Liriani precision. The air around them shimmered visibly as power built. "Now," she whispered, both aloud and in his mind. The release was explosive. A wave of concentrated emotional energy burst from them, expanding outward through the ship's hull and into space. On the view screen, the Vorn vessel's trajectory suddenly wavered. "Their systems are going haywire," Thorn reported, surprise evident in her voice. "Weapons offline, engines fluctuating." Selenara sagged against Ryder, the effort clearly draining her. But the connection between them remained, vibrant and intimate. "It worked," she murmured. "But Viridian will recover quickly. His cybernetic systems will adapt." Thorn was already plotting a new course. "There's a jump point behind that large asteroid. If we reach it before they recover, we might lose them in the Veil Nebula." As the stray impulse accelerated away from the disabled Vorn vessel, Ryder guided Selenara back to their cabin. The empathic connection still thrummed between them, making words seem inadequate. "I feel everything," he said once they were alone. "Your memories, your emotions." "And I yours," she replied, her tendrils caressing his face with surprising tenderness. "You carry so much hidden pain. The colonies, your family. "Don't," he whispered, unaccustomed to such emotional exposure. Her golden eyes studied him with newfound understanding. "The connection will settle, become less overwhelming. But it will never disappear entirely." "I don't want it to," Ryder admitted, surprising himself with the truth of it. The ship jolted as it entered the jump point, space-time distorting around them. In the momentary disorientation, Selenara moved closer, her body fitting against his with unexpected familiarity. "Among my people," she said softly, "the empathic bond is sacred. More intimate than physical connection." "And among humans," Ryder replied, his hand gently lifting to trace the contours of her face, "we value both equally." Their first kiss was tentative, a careful exploration of alien and familiar. Through their connection, Ryder felt Selenara's initial surprise melt into curiosity, then pleasure. Her tendrils entwined with his hair, drawing him closer as the kiss deepened. The physical differences between them seemed to fade against the backdrop of their empathic bond. Every touch, every caress was magnified through their shared emotional awareness. Ryder felt not only his own desire but hers as well, creating an intoxicating feedback loop of sensation and emotion. "I never expected this," Selenara whispered against his skin as they sank onto the narrow bunk together. "To find connection so far from home." "Maybe that's what we both needed," Ryder replied, his hands exploring the luminescent patterns that appeared on her skin where he touched. "Someone who understands what it means to be lost." Their joining transcended simple physical pleasure. Through their empathic bond, boundaries blurred, human and Liriani, protector and fugitive, separate beings becoming momentarily something greater than the sum of their parts. In those moments of perfect unity, Ryder understood what Selenara had meant about the sacred nature of such connections. Afterward, as the stray impulse cruised safely through the swirling gases of the Veil Nebula, they lay entwined in comfortable silence. Ryder's thoughts, no longer entirely his own, drifted to their uncertain future. "The Vorn won't stop hunting us," he said finally. "Especially now that we've proven what a human Liriani pairing can do." Selenara nodded against his chest. "The memory crystals must reach safety. There are resistance groups in the Outer Rim who would protect the knowledge of my people." "And your brother?" Her tendrils curled with sadness. "Viridian was once the kindest of us all. What the Vorn have done to him. Perhaps he can be reached, reminded of who he was." Thorn's voice interrupted through the intercom. "Picking up chatter on Imperial frequencies. They're organizing a search grid. Decision time, where are we heading?" Ryder looked down at Selenara, feeling her resolve through their connection. "The Outer Rim, then?" "Yes," she replied, her golden eyes reflecting the stars visible through their viewport. "But not to hide. To build. What we did today, the empathic amplification, it's unprecedented. If others like us exist. A resistance," Ryder finished her thought. "Humans and Liriani together, against the Imperium." She smiled, the expression transforming her alien features. "Perhaps humanity's reputation for determination and our empathic abilities would make a formidable combination." Ryder activated the intercom. "Captain, set course for the Outer Rim. We're done running." As the ship adjusted its trajectory, Ryder felt Selenara's consciousness brush against his, grateful, determined, and affectionate. Whatever dangers lay ahead, they would face them not as protector and fugitive, but as equals bound by something neither had expected to find among the stars. The empathic guardian and his Liriani partner, the first of many who would challenge an empire built on subjugation with the most powerful force in the galaxy, connection.